We continue the Zamyad Yast with verse 70 and part 11 is 70 to 72. We sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, and so on. Awful as in awe-inspiring, not, 71. That clave unto Kave Kavata, and unto Kave a Epiv Ohu, and unto Kave Usaba, and unto Kave Arshan, and unto Kave Pisina, and unto Kave Biarshan, and unto Kave Siarshan. 72. So that they were all of them brave, all of them strong, all of them healthful, all of them wise, all of them happy in their wishes, all of them powerful kings. For its brightness and glory I will offer it a sacrifice, and so on. Part 2 is 73 to 77. 73. With sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, so on. 74. That clave unto Kave Husrava, for the well-shapen strength, for the victory made by Ahura, for the crushing ascendant, for the righteousness of the law, for the innocence of the law, for the unconquerable power of the law, for the extermination of the enemies at one stroke, 75. And for the vigor of health, for the glory made by Mazda, for the health of the body, and for a good, virtuous offspring, wise, chief in assemblies, bright and clear-eyed, that frees their father from the pangs of hell, of good intellect, and for that part of in the blessed world that falls to wisdom, and those who do not fall low in piety. 76. And for a dominion full of splendor, for a long, long life, and for all boons and remedies. 77. So that the king Husrava had a lead all along the long race, and he could not pass through the forest. The murderer was fiercely striving against him on horseback. Pardon me. The Lord Kave Husrava prevailed over all as he put in bonds Fran Gracian and Kerasavazda to avenge the murder of his father Sia Varshana, a man, and of Agra Eratha, a semi-man. For its brightness and glory I will offer it a sacrifice, and so on. Part 13 is 78 to 82. 78. With sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, and so on. 79. That clave unto the holy Zarathustra, so that he thought according to the law, spake according to the law, and did according to the law, so that he was the holiest in holiness in all the living world, the best ruling in exercising rule, the brightest in brightness, the most glorious in glory, the most victorious in victory. 80. At his sight the Da'avas rushed away. At his sight the demoniac malices were extinguished. At his sight the godliness drew back their ways from the mortals, and lamenting and wailing laid violent hands on the Da'avas. 81. And that one prayer, the Ahuna Ba'eria, which the holy Zarathustra sang and repeated 4 times, with a song that waxed louder and louder, drove back all the Da'avas beneath the earth, and took off from them sacrifice and prayer. So, all this, see, that makes clear that all this, the prayer upon them, the sacrifice upon them, it says, these other, the light beings and the forces of nature and the earth and the good principles and stuff like this, the Da'avas also had that sort of thing. But, there were devil worshippers, long before Zarathustra, so don't let people trick you into thinking it's only starting in the 60s or something. 82. It was the glory of Zarathustra, that the Turanian ruffian, Fran Gracian tried to rule over all the Karshvaras round about. The 7 Karshvaras did that ruffian Fran Gracian rush, trying to seize the glory of Zarathustra, but that glory escaped to hidden inlets of the sea. And there were those 2 made my will roll on. They entered my will as it was my wish, Ahura Mazda's, and as it was the wish of the law of Mazda for its brightness and glory, I will offer it a sacrifice. Part 14 is 83 to 87. 83. We sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, so on. 84. That clave unto King Vistaspa, so that he thought according to the law, spake according to the law, and did according to the law, so that he professed that law, destroying his foes, and causing the Daivas to retire. 85. Who, driving the Droog before him, sought wide room for the holy religion, who, driving the Droog before him, made wide room for the holy religion, who made himself the arm and support of this law of Ahura, this law of Zarathustra. 86. Who took her standing, bound from the hands of the Hunus, who established her to sit in the middle of the world. Of the worlds in brackets. High ruling, never falling back, holy, nourished, with plenty of cattle and pastures. Blessed, with plenty of cattle and pastures. 87. The valiant king, Vistaspa, conquered all enemies. Tathravant, of the evil law. Pashana, the worshipper of the Daivas, and the fiendish wicked Aragat Aspa, and the other wicked Havyanas. For its brightness and glory, I will offer it a sacrifice, and so on. Part 15 is 88 to 90. 88. We sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, so on. Unto as in, towards such ends. 89. That will cleave unto the victorious Sa'ashant and his helpers, when he shall restore the world, which will, thenceforth, never grow old and never die, never decaying and never rotting, ever living and ever increasing, and master of its wish, when the dead will rise, when life and immortality will come, and the world will be restored at its wish. 90. When the creation will grow deathless, its prosperous creation of the good spirit, and the Droog shall perish, though she may rush on every side to kill the holy beings. She and her 100-fold brood shall perish, as it is the will of the Lord. For its brightness and glory I will offer it a sacrifice. 16 is 91 to 97. 91. We sacrifice unto the awful kingly glory made by Mazda, and so on. 92. When Astavat Areta shall rise up from Lake Kasava, a friend of Ahura Mazda, a son of Vispa Ta Rurva Ere, knowing the victorious knowledge it was that glory that Thra'e Ta'ana bore with him when Aza Nahaka was killed. 93. That Fran Gracian the Turanian bore when Durva'u was killed, when the bull was killed. That King Husrava bore when Fran Gracian the Turanian was killed. That King Vistaspa bore when he victoriously maintained holiness against the host of the fiends and took off the Drub from the world of the good principle. Drub? Do they mean Droog? 94. He, with the eye of intelligence, shall look down upon all the creatures of the Pa'esis. Her of the evil seed, he shall look upon the whole living world with the eye of plenty, and his look shall deliver to immortality the whole of the living creatures. 95. And there shall his friends come forward, the friends of Astvat Areta, who are fiend-smiting, well-thinking, well-speaking, well-doing, following the good law, and whose tongues have never uttered a word of falsehood. Before them shall Eshma of the wounding spear, who has no glory, bow and flee. He shall smite the most wicked Droog, her of the evil seed, born of darkness. 96. Akem Mano smites, but Bahu Mano shall smite him. The word of falsehood smites, but the word of truth shall smite it. Ha'urvatat and Ameratat shall smite both hunger and thirst. Ha'urvatat and Ameratat shall smite the evil hunger and the evil thirst, the evil doing, and Gratma in you bows and flees, becoming powerful-less. For its brightness and glory, I will offer it a sacrifice, and so on. 97. Yatha ahu va'irio, the will of the Lord is the law of holiness, and so on. I bless the sacrifice and prayer and the strength and vigor of Mount Usha Darena, made by Mazda, the seat of holy happiness, of the kingly glory, made by Mazda, of the glory that cannot be forcibly seized, made by Mazda. Asham Bahu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. Give unto that man brightness and glory, and give him the bright, all-happy, blissful abode of the holy ones. Oh, there's more verses in that than I thought. So we are continuing the Bahram Yast comment with the king cover. Okay. Gond is the Pahlavi for horns bent round? No, it's not the horns bent round, it's something else. Oh, the manliness. The fountains of manliness. That's a weird way to phrase it, but Erese. And the perception instead of measure, perhaps, is a way to translate it. So we have those fish who know the scratch of a needle's point are better whole, by which the water shall increase, or which is diminishing. On the Bundahis, 18:6. Avak Shah Ityau is the night before Hu Vaksha, before the time when the light begins to grow. Midnight. Well, you don't really see it midnight, but yeah. Regarding the Arab horse, they say that if in a dark night a single hair occurs on the ground, he sees it. And the golden collar is possibly the Kipatus, the Va Utor Dore. Let us remember that the reason why such and such king had his enemies, it wasn't that, oh, they believe different, there's countries that aren't under my rule and that sort of thing. No, there was raiders and other marauding criminals and stuff like this. So even from his highest flight, he, the vulture, sees when the flesh, the size of a fist, is on the ground. Pesho Parena. The Varengana is the same bird as the Varagna, the raven. The feather of the Varengana plays here the same part as the Simurg's feather in the Shah Nama, when Rudaba's flank was opened to bring forth Rustem. Her wound was healed by rubbing it with the Simurg's feather. Rustem, wounded to death by Isfendyar, was cured in the same manner. And so we move on to, want to make clear which verse it is we're referring to, but, he who holds the feather will no longer kill his hundreds, and after the killer of men, the blank is the Va-e-sa-epa. And, then there's, in verse 39, there's thought to be a bird that carries the chariot. So, again, very mythical reference here. Ka'e ka'us. when he tried to ascend heaven on a throne carried by eagles. And so, some of this goes before the Greeks, although the Greek mythology taps into something as old as what can be referenced here, 9,000 years ago or something. A lot of the Greek mythology actually a little more than that was the whole end of the Ice Age thing, right? So metaphor to express the swiftness of the wind and the camel and of the rivers is this, upon his wings runs the male horse. And the good principle, sorry about that. 33. Jumped ahead here. But the sa'ena, basically the same as this simurg. I pointed that out before. There's some doubt about whether or not is saying do not throw the 4 feathers bit. So the 4 feathered arrows is the feather is an arrow feathered with the 4 Varenganas feathers. And so the 2, in 45 we have the 2 who, the 2 who, the 2 who, and then the forgetting. So Adwa Azen, Vid Wa Ozen, Fra Wa Ozen, and that's for each. And the A Mer Rezen, also as Vimar Rezen and Fra Marazen. But, there's continually working against truth, against Rashnu. So the person who works against Rashnu is thought to work against truth. Drug is the lie, but it's a little broader than that, right? Gosurun are Durvaspa. The destruction of any living being is an injury to Durvaspa, as it said. Vyambara is, for now the Vyambara in verse 55, so whatever that's supposed to mean. When the something da'avas, in order to strike, and something in order to strike the da'avas, okay, that makes sense. The general meaning of the last 4 clauses is that the impious are defeated. And sa'ere ba'ogem is mentioned, the person who saves their own head. Nevez ete literally means the swallow. I believe is that talking about, that's talking about the bird, right? Yeah. No, that's talking about, Okay, I've got to make sure about that. And, there's the overtaking in the literal sense. Well, it's interesting to have the reference to what's literal and what's otherwise. So prevailing over the enemies. Well, I guess you really don't have to point out how quite literal that is. Asanam Sigu Ere is up a bright something. So the sun and the suns offer up a bright, whatever Asanam Sigu Ere is. Yasna 10:20 mentions where instead of the words, in the ox is our strength, Amem, in the ox is our need, the text has, in the ox is his need, and in the ox is our need, meaning when we give him his need, water and grass, He gives us our need, milk and calves. And so the Verefrogna sacrifice is, of course, referred to. The Apamnapat, or Tisturia, is the being referenced in the Yast in the verse 1, who divides them, the divider of the waters. Fraspat is the golden beams, okay. Oh, is that the Persian word? Azveo, the atmosphere, is the place in which the conflict of the two principles takes place. One part of him belongs to the evil spirit. And forget about the clauses. We have Takma Urupa, in later legend as Ta Muraf, was the brother to Yima. He reigned for 30 years and rode Ahriman, turned into a horse, but at last his wife, deceived by Ahriman, revealed to him the secret of her husband's power, and Tahmuraf was swallowed up by his horse. But Yima managed to take back his brother's body from the body of Ahriman and recovered thereby the arts and civilization which had disappeared along with Tahmuraf. Azinavant, or Za Enha Havant. He kept that epithet in later tradition. And 72, okay. Okay, we're referring to verse 11, okay. And some people say that, well, just because it's the same sort of, doesn't mean the passage in 16 is just a mere alteration. And the accursed place of the stork, that's an interesting one here. The accursed place of the Kavirnta in verse 19. Okay. Upa Kavirntem Duzitem. Asa Dahaka, says Hamza, used to live in Babylon, where he had built a palace in the form of a stork. He called it Kuleng Dis, the fortress of a stork. The inhabitants called it Dis Het. Kuleng Dis was in Zend Kavirinta da Eza, and Dis Het is nothing else than Duzeta. One may doubt whether Kavirinta is the name of a place or the Zen form of Kuleng, a stork. In any case, it was the place in Baure, Babylon. In the Shahnameh, it is called Dezukt, or Duz Ukta for Duz Eta. And an unknown affluent of the Ranga Tigris is Gudha. Sama had two sons, Karasaspa, a warrior, and Urvakshaya, a judge and lawgiver. We have no further details about Urvakshaya's legend than that he was killed by Hitaspa, the Golden Crowned, and avenged by Karasaspa, a disconnected allusion to the struggle of Karasaspa with the Gandharva on the words of the son of Ahura, in verse 28. We're talking about the master of the deep, so. No other mention is made of Vasara in the Vesta, unless he is alluded to in Yasts 550. He does not appear to have been known to Fridausa. Spa Etenis Razura is called the chief of fortresses. Of forests. According to the Bahman Yast, it was the seat of the last and decisive battle between Argasp and Gustasp. And, well, we can certainly piecemeal some of these things and take some prayers out, but verse 32, guardians in the forest and all that sort of, is thought to be part of a counter prayer by Husrava, which is heard by Vayu. And it may be doubted that the allusion in verse 39 to him, the maids, golden canopy, that sort of thing, is the legend of marriage in Amasa, following the marriage of Hutaasa with Vistaspa, or whether the aorist is used with an indicative meaning. To him do the maids, who have known no man, and so on, they beg of him boons, saying, well, people back in the day, when they get married, they would build a canopy, or they'd, at least put a sheet on sticks and have people stand under it or something. An attempt to an etymological explanation of the name Bayu. The Yama and the two worlds and the good spirit, and verse 43 is what they're talking about. And Zarathustra is seen as the agent and the instrument. Is Zarathustra referring to here? Oh, no, the Amesha Spentus. Okay, yeah, that's makes sense too. Innova is the name that's, left blank here in 45. But, that's not given a translation. Keredarissa is the second name that's left blank there. And Ba'aka is the quick of intelligence, if that's to be correct. So this, destroy welfare. Wait. Yeah. Gereda is the burrow of an Ahramanian creature, in that half of him that belongs to the evil spirit is the seat, the burrow, of Ahraman, but with his better half he struggles against the fiend and destroys him. Because people believe that some of the creatures, I guess some of them weren't liked, but, the people had this idea that somehow, the devil had a series of creations rather than... So in verse 50, the mention to robbing is coveting, which isn't quite the same as coveting, but coveting leads to a lot of things too. And so there's some corruption in a text to follow. But a couple verses down, right? They flee away from the prison, verse 52, okay. And Zarathustra's wife, Havovi, right? 11. That's the next one, right? So we are the Dean Yast, and that's a verse 15. Because a wife who practices the same religion as you and makes sacrifices too, and a good thing to have. Banga, the so-called Bung of Zoroaster, what must have been its virtue may be gathered from the legends of Gustasp and Arda-Virov, who were said to have been transported in soul to the heavens, and to have had the higher mysteries revealed to them on drinking from a cup prepared by the prophet Zardusht Nama, or from a cup of Gustasp Bang. The itinerant priests are not really the ancestors of the modern dervishes, but the verse 17 of Din Yast kind of did refer to the people being sent afar, wandering dervishes. That does make sense. But they did what was better, and that they still did sacrifices and stuff. In Parsi, Ardisvang or Ardis from Artis, the Persian form of Ashes, presiding over the 25th day of the month. And 15. Oh. The good Ashe. Ashe Manguhe. So we're on to that Yast. Ashe is not the feminine objective of Asha, as the I was originally short. The genitive Asho is not Ashya'u. Asha is arte, and means bhakti, piety. Well, devotion. But not devotion in the sense of the archangel. Well, sort of in the same sense, but the so-called Asha's remedies, Ashois Ba'ashaza. Now, we're not saying that we can't, engage in, certainly we're talking about the delineation of medicine as things go on. So, so the enumeration is the same as in the Gos Yast. Prathu Vira is fullness of intellect.